Folks, welcome back. The face of the Get Back to Work movement across the country, Shelley Luther, she was released from jail yesterday after being sentenced by a liberal judge, Eric Moyer. She wasn't sentenced for disobeying the orders on reopening her salon, but failing to, get this, apologize to that judge and politicians. Joining us now, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Sir, thanks for the time.
You bet, Chris. Always good to be with you.
You paid for Miss Luther's fine to her GoFundMe page, $7,000. Then you volunteered to do her time for her so she could get back to work. Why did you do that? And have you spoken with Miss Luther?
You know, I've not spoken with her, never met her, don't know the judge in the case. I don't know the Republican lady who's running against him in November, but I might get to know her before November. This judge might have a race on his hands. But the truth is, Chris, I was doing another press conference Wednesday, and I'd been working on this big project. It was a 100-page report I was working on reopening Texas and reopening America. And so I was aware of the story. And in fact, I had been interviewed about Shelley last week on some shows. And in the middle of the press conference on Wednesday, someone asked me about it and told me about her jail sentence and her fine. And I said, I'll just pay the fine. I mean, it was the first thing that came to me. I'll pay her fine. This is not right. This is such overreach. And then I thought to myself, and I had read the story that he had done that, but the question had come to me. And so then I said, look, I'll even offer to let the judge, put me in home confinement for the next 7 days until the sentence is over, and let her go out back to her family and her business. And I didn't do it, Chris, to grandstand. It just occurred to me that maybe this judge had actually made a mistake. Maybe he, in the heat of the moment, we all can make a mistake, and maybe this would be a face-saving way for him to get out of it, because he could say he's a left-wing, judge, and I'm a right-wing conservative, so maybe he could kind of smile and say, I'm going to put that conservative, make him stay at home for the next 5 or 6 days, whatever's left on the sentence. I really thought it was a way to kind of bridge this gap and end it. What I didn't know at the time, Chris, was this guy wanted to punish her, that he's arrogant, that he wanted to make an example out of her. Again, he didn't send her to jail because she broke the governor's order, which she did. That could have been a $50 fine and let her go home. He sent her to jail because she wouldn't grovel to him. She wouldn't apologize. And Chris, my son is a U.S. attorney today. He was a criminal court judge, and he had a reputation for being a great judge and a tough judge. But he also had discernment, and he had compassion, and he had mercy when it was needed. And every judge should have those qualities, or they shouldn't be on the bench. This was a case of compassion, and mercy should have been used.
Exactly. I completely concur. I don't know if you know this, but there was a social media post out there by Mr. Moyer where he was gleeful that a woman in South Carolina who was protesting to get it reopened, she came down with coronavirus. Another protester, get back to work. And he put on his Facebook page that he was happy for Karma, that lady Karma he loved, that she had gotten sick. It just seems to me he was out there to settle a political score rather than dispense justice. And isn't there a difference between somebody who's playing hard and fast with the rule of law and somebody who's interested in justice?
No, absolutely. And that's why, and I'm worried, Chris, about the judges we've been electing, the George Soros judges. And this guy came in with the Obama wave, I think, in 2008. I don't know a lot about him, except he's on the ballot and has a Republican opponent, except that, in November. A woman on top of that, which is very interesting. So I don't know much about the guy, but I know how he behaved in that courtroom. And I kind of harken back to some of those old great movies they made, the Frank Capra movies in the 1940s, where someone was before the judge and they stood their ground, and the judge finally looked down and smiled and said, "Hey, I'm going to find it." In those days, it would have been $10 and suspend the sentence. But I admire what you've done and salute you. And that's the American story. That's how this should have ended for her. That judge should have said, "You were wrong, and if you don't want to apologize, then I respect your position of defending your business and your family, $50 and go back to work." That's what he should have done. And he would have been a hero, Chris, a hero. Instead,
probably,
guess what?
Yeah, but see,
Yeah, he wasn't a hero.
He didn't want to look around at all the suffering going on in the very community he's supposed to serve. He doesn't notice all of that. And I wanted you to comment, too, because he's not the only one. Judge Moye in Texas, he is just a microcosm of what else is going on around the rest of the country, where we've seen people who are your political opposition use this crisis as a mechanism to show the iron fist of government and control. And it sickens me to see it.
Yeah, you know, we had a case down in Laredo, two ladies that they were doing nails and eyelashes and hair in their apartments. And someone actually called 911 and turned them in. Can you imagine that? 911, what's the emergency? Apartment 314, they're doing eyelashes. And so then, Chris, to make that even more bizarre, the police department down there set up a sting operation. And they sent people in. And in a sting operation, they arrested these ladies. I can only imagine, Chris, you know, usually when there's a sting, the mugshot is up, you know, on some city website of the people who get caught. I'm sure they had, you know, pictures of women up there with their eyelashes done and their hair done. Look at these mugshots. Look what they've done. And so they were facing, Chris, 180 days in jail. And now they served just a few and they bonded out. But you know what? There's two things that this message sends. Number one, that first of all, you don't mess with Texas, because you know the governor, the attorney general, myself, we rose up and we were able to figure a way to get her out, and that worked out. Number two, the people have circled around this woman and her story all across America. It's become one of the hottest stories ever seen. Three, Chris, we have to take this.
One more quick question I got to get in for you, because in San Antonio, as you know, I have seen, and I've seen other interviews, and you've done an interview right here on the Chris Salcedo show where you were just aghast at people waiting in food lines. You couldn't believe this was happening in America. All the misery going on. The city council and the mayor of San Antonio, they have turned themselves into the word police, and they're now saying that they're dubbing the term China virus or Kung Fu virus. They're deeming that hate speech in the middle. This is what's consuming that city council and mayor. Your reaction?
I figured it out. They have a real problem with anything that starts with CH, Chick-fil-A and China. So they're just anything that starts with CH, they're going to pass a bill on. And you know, and the serious point I was going to get back to, Chris, is this. And by the way, it's disgraceful that that's what they're focused on right now when people are really in trouble, that they're worried about calling it the China virus. That's where it came from. But here's the real thing that concerns me, Chris, in this country, is that, and I love the attorney for Shelley, he said these are tiny tyrants. And if you look across the country, it's the Democrat judges, the Democrat mayors, the Democrat county judges, the Democrat governors, who are the ones that seem to enjoy this moment of power. It's like they're all Barney Fife and they have more than one bullet in their gun and they're going to use it on people. I mean, they are just after.
All of this arcane Hollywood reference. I mean, I got that one. The Barney Fife one I got. Hey, look, Governor, I got to scoot. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time here on the Salcedo
We'll
show.
come back. Folks, we'll come back again.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And welcome back, everybody. Joined now by Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Sir, appreciate you being here and making time for us on the Salcedo show.
My pleasure. Great to be back. Thanks.
Sir, it struck me the other day when I saw what you did in revising your executive order to basically not allow folks to be jailed by violation of some of these orders and restrictions. Not only are you saddled with fighting the coronavirus in the great state of Texas, but you also have to beat back these extremists, these left-wing extremists who are trying to use their totalitarian powers over the people. Why did you feel the need to step in on this one?
Several reasons. One is your audience needs to understand the bigger picture of what's going on in the legal system in the state of Texas. In Dallas County, where this event was taking place, we have a district attorney who has announced that he is not going to prosecute anybody who steals something of value less than $750. So they will not put thieves behind bars, and they may be letting some hardened criminals out of jail because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and yet they want to put a hard-working businesswoman behind bars simply because she was trying to earn a living to pay for food for her children. That leads to a topsy-turvy legal system, and as a result, had it not been corrected, it would cause distrust in the system. So what I wanted to do here, as well as to address issues in other jurisdictions where threats were being made about action being taken against anybody who didn't live up to the standards of local orders, I wanted to make sure, whether it be at the state level or at the local level, we would ensure that these hard-working Texans, through no fault of their own, who've lost their access to income, are not going to be put behind bars. That's not the right action at this time in this pandemic.
Governor, you were in a previous life, you were an attorney general as well. I want to focus in on the judge, if we can, for a minute, because we here on the Chris Salcedo Show, we've discovered a social media posting from this judge where he seemed to relish one of these protesters out there saying, hey, let's get back to work. She caught the coronavirus, and this judge, Eric Moyer, just relished in the fact that she caught COVID-19. If it is determined that, and I think he should have recused himself from the Shelley Luther case, but he didn't. He took that case, and you saw what he did. He dropped the hammer on her. There's an ethical panel that is inside of the state of Texas. Do you believe this judge ought to be reviewed?
So you mentioned that before I was governor, I was the attorney general. Before that, I was a Supreme Court justice and a trial court judge. And so the actions that you're describing to me right now seem inconsistent with the standards that we expect of our judges in Texas. And so it would not surprise me at all if someone were to request a review of this judge's actions.
Now, I want to focus in on the folks out there because in anticipation of your appearance here, we received some emails from some folks in Houston. One guy said, look, we provide physical therapy for some folks. They are literally hurting. When do you anticipate Texas getting all the way open? Give us a timetable.
Well, if you're talking about physical therapists, I mean, they should be able to be practicing either now or really soon. I don't know if that's the job category you're talking about, but let's just talk about the bigger picture, and that is Texas now has restaurants, malls, retail stores of any type, movies, museums. We also allow doctors and nurses and dentists to be able to provide the full array of health care services that they can provide. And then on top of that, of course, we now have hair salons, barbershops, gyms, offices. So much is open in the state of Texas, but as the president and I talked about yesterday in the Oval Office, they are proud in the White House about the strategic way that Texas is going about the process of opening up so that we can monitor it and make sure that we can contain it and don't have a surge of COVID-19 across the state of Texas. And so what I announced last week is that we would monitor for the next 2 weeks about how much the coronavirus may be spreading in Texas if Texans can continue to do a good job of containing the spread of COVID-19. When I make my announcement on May the 18th, we will be able to open up even more business sectors in the state.
Yeah, and so far you've been open for about a week. How's it been going? Every single time you get in front of the camera, you always talk about the data that's driving your decisions. How did the first week go?
So understand this. People, there are two things that matter the most, and that is deaths, obviously, and the other is hospitalizations. So get this, of all the large states in America, Texas has the fewest deaths. In fact, the only states that have fewer deaths are some of these very large states with low populations like Alaska, Wyoming, Montana, etc. But that aside, the other thing that we look at is hospitalization rates. So get this, from yesterday to today, there are 16 fewer people who were hospitalized. So throughout this pandemic, our hospitalization rate has stayed pretty much level and steady. Texas has not encountered the situations like we've seen in New York or New Jersey or elsewhere where they were overcome in their hospitals. And so we have abundant hospital supplies. We're doing a good job of holding down our deaths, and we have surge capacity to attack any type of spread of the coronavirus. So I would say things are looking pretty good right now, but we need to keep it that way.
All right, Governor Abbott, the president can't say enough good things about the job you're doing, and we thanked you yesterday after your executive order for Shelley Luther. Thanks for being here on the Salcedo Show. It's appreciated.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to NewsmaxTV.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.